Thank God it's Friday. And for someone like me, the end of the week means heading out to grab a drink with my friends. As someone who has been in Bangalore for over a decade now, I confess I'm spoiled for choices. I mean, I have choices from having freshly brewed beer at a rooftop bar to speakeasies to absolutely no-frill cheap bars like Satya's and Shalimar, and not to mention all the fancy bar options for cocktail nights. But for me, it's all about familiarity though. I almost always prefer my neighborhood watering hole over most other places. My current favorite has been my go-to bar for years now. And what makes me go back to it every time? Perfect ambience, low volume of music, great food, and some genuinely stiff drinks. Vibe is very important. And so is proximity. But last week I decided to make an exception on the last bit and decided to check out this bar that's making quite a lot of noise and travel 15 kilometers to have a nice drink at Kopitas.
I think you should definitely try our signature drinks called the Greener Future. From that, you can try the leaf and the flower. Since you're here for the evening time, you should definitely also try our Copa G80s series.
Perfect. So which one would you suggest for right now?
Number 4 is with your turmeric basil gin and tonic.
Perfect. Could I please have one of those?
Absolutely, why not?
Thank you. I mean, they made it to Asia's 50 best bars this year, ranking at 38. And it's not just Kopitas, by the way. This year, Indian bars truly made a mark for themselves in the Asia-Pacific F&B scene. While Delhi's Sidecar has carved a rank for itself on this list for third time in a row, the 2023 list also had 3 more Indian additions. Mumbai-based The Living Room by Mask Restaurants and the Bombay Canteen, and Bangalore-based Kopitas. Remember, you are competing with thousands of bars from the region just by 260 members from 26 countries. So this is no mean feat. But running a bar in India is not so easy. From licenses to rentals to quality real estate, this business of glamour and glitz is not so glamorous when you actually have to run it. So how much do you need to start a bar? What should be the footfall like to make sure the bar continues to run successfully? How hectic is it to get those liquor licenses? What kind of food needs to be on the menu so that people keep coming back? In short, what does the Karobar of running a bar looks like? Our guests today are the people behind 2 bars that made it to the list this year. Founder and CEO of the Living Room Mask Restaurants, Aditi Dugar, also known for her expertise in fine dining restaurants such as Sage and Saffron, and more recently for her coffee shop called Araku. Joining Aditi is the man who put the name Kejriwal on the food menu, founder and CEO of the Bombay Canteen, Yash Banage. And our third and final guest today is someone who was not as fortunate as the other 2, and perhaps knows the challenges of running a bar a little too well. Balakrishnan Subramanian, Senior Brand Manager, Mixologist, and ex-bar owner. It's Friday, August 4th, 2023. I am your host, Shobori Das, and you are listening to The Morning Brief. If you're wondering why the business of running a bar is important now, considering we only have 4 bars in the list of 50, then let me tell you why. India is the biggest whiskey drinking nation in the world, but our drinking habits are slightly different. While we do enjoy a tipple, we also tend to drink mostly at home. Off-trade, or simply put the retail store sales, that is our thekas and your neighborhood wine and beer shop in India for Alcobev, contributes to almost 84% of the total revenue according to Euromonitor International. And the on-trade channel, or also commonly known as hotels, bars and restaurants, contribute the remaining. Running a bar is seriously no joke. To give context how big a challenge it is to get an Indian to walk into a bar instead of sitting at home and having their drink is possibly this. India's total number of transactions at bars, as per Euromonitor International, for calendar year 2023 is expected to be 1,146 million. This is literally 1/8 of the US market and 1/3 of the China market. Our average yearly expenditure on drinking out is literally 1% of the US per person expenditure on the same. No wonder our market size, that is $4 billion of value sales from bars, is a small fraction of those in the West. One of the obvious reasons why Indians often tend to prefer drinking at home over bars is the pricing. For example, a 750 ml bottle of Jameson is available for about 3,000 rupees in Bangalore. A full bottle will give you about 12 to 13 larges, a large peg being 60 ml at 240 bucks. This is obviously at MRP. A large pour of the same at a bar in Bangalore would cost me about 400 to 500 bucks, literally twice, if not more. And the pandemic made this habit even more pronounced. While yes, we are drinking better than ever and premiumization is definitely on the rise, we are also mostly drinking straight drinks at a house party. So, what does one do when they want to have a nice cocktail instead? Well, they follow the priest, the rabbi, and the minister and walk into a bar. Let's dive in and ask the questions about the economics of a bar to the bar owners directly. Welcome to the morning brief, Aditi. First of all, congratulations, a big congratulations to the entire living room team. You guys have done some fantastic work.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Truly humbled. It's been a crazy journey. And living room was literally a COVID concept. And to see it on the list in such short time was really exciting.
That's interesting. So it started sometime in 2020, correct?
Correct, because actually it's kind of an extension to the mezzanine level of our dining room. And during COVID, we didn't have that many diners through the door and people were still sort of staying safe. We were also kind of limiting the seating and distancing our customers. So we realized that, maybe we need to offer something, could be where people could also come. And I think mask drinks have always been as strong as our food philosophy since the day we opened in 2016. And we've been always running a very, very strong bar program. We realized that during COVID, if we weren't really utilizing all the seats, sort of the bar also needed that kind of center stage, and it would give diners another opportunity to come in more regularly if they weren't coming in for a full tasting experience.
So you kind of touched upon something that I was going to start with. Limited seating. The bar is quite infamous for not getting a table. Why is that? Is that purposeful or is it just a byproduct of the COVID situation?
It's really a byproduct. And now we're realizing that we're in a situation because after coming on the list, 14 seats is not going to be enough, right? It's not even doing justice to how we would want to actually showcase this bar anymore. There are already plans of actually taking it out of the restaurant into its own physical space.
Understood. What are the expenses like when you are running a bar? Upfront, what is the minimum amount you should totally have if you want to launch a full scale bar such as yours? And what are the major constituents of the expenses that you guys have to bear when you are starting a brand like this?
I think that it varies, right? I think a minimum spend to set up an F&B setup of anywhere between a minimum of about 2.5 to 3 crores is what you should have in your bank account to even start something fairly decent. There are so many components to this. It's if we're talking about Bombay City where rents are so unaffordable for commercial spaces, I think that a lot of capital expenditure just gets eaten up with, paying, landlords demand, say, a 6-month upfront payment to block towards a rental agreement. So capital expenditure, if you're spending, I know people who even spend upwards of 15 lakhs per month on rent. That itself, or you can imagine a huge chunk of your capital just being blocked towards a rental agreement. If I had to take living room outside of Mars, I would be expected to pay a minimum rent of, to get a space of about even a 2,500 square feet space. You're looking at a rental of anywhere between, in a good location, a good charming location is what I would ideally look at. And it would be a minimum of 500 to 600 rupees a square foot is what you would be looking at. One ideally should not be spending more than 10% of their revenues on rent. But, being in Mumbai, like now with our other concepts, when we have to go to a more mainstream location, we know that what rents cost and sometimes it's unaffordable.
On an average, how much is a guest spending at your bar? Are they ordering more food or alcohol?
So I would say at the living room, because we also have a snack menu, which is so downstairs in the main dining room. Of course, it's only the tasting menu, which is priced at 4,500 plus taxes. I mean, now Mask is shut and we reopen on the 1st of August because we've kind of revamped a little bit of the restaurant when we reopened. So we were on a monsoon break and the pricing would be revised to 5,000 plus taxes. But at the living room, you would end up spending anywhere between, I would say, 2 to 3,000 a head. And I think, your order value would be maybe 30% towards food and 70% towards alcohol.
What would you say is the tipping point in terms of pricing, which would make consumers be like, no, this is too expensive?
I think value really comes from the experience. I don't think that at least our consumers are that price sensitive, but it's like, our consumers are not looking for sweet cocktails, like where, everything is just sort of masked by like sugar syrups and they're not really tasting the alcohol. So I think creating a really well balanced cocktail is kind of defining the experience and their value for the product. And they're ready to pay anywhere from, like I said, between 1,000 to 1,800 rupees for a great cocktail.
But Aditi, there is now a lot of red tape before the, red carpet, right? I'm talking about the super cumbersome process of getting a license. What's that like?
Well, I mean, in order to get a liquor license, frankly, you need to first get an eating house license. Because when you have a bar, you're also, going to be running some sort of a kitchen, right? Basically, in India, there's a rule that if you have seats, your customers, you're going to have people sitting in your premise and consuming anything, you need an eating house license. Post that, you approach the excise department to apply for an alcohol license. All of this is a very lengthy process in India because the committee only meets 2 or 3 times a year. So if you miss that window, then, you have to kind of wait for an opportunity for your form to again get accepted, etc. Getting a wine license is definitely easier as compared to a full alcohol license, and also it's like 30-40% of the cost of the full alcohol license. I think the official fee for a full alcohol license is about 12 lakhs.
Did it help to get the license for the living room because you were already operating other brands as well?
We didn't need to get a special license for the living room because the restaurant was already fully operational with all licenses in its place. Mask has been serving alcohol since day one, since we're a full-fledged restaurant. So we've had a full-fledged alcohol license since day one.
What other revenue streams does the living room have? Are there ticketed events?
We do a lot of like we do some like restaurant, bar takeovers. Last year we had a couple of international bars come and do a collab with us.
But are these ticketed events?
Ticketed events, yes. These are ticketed events, or like alcohol companies would sponsor Mask. They would take on all our expenses and costs. So it does become a revenue stream for us. And so we do a lot of like international bar like collabs. So I think that gives us a lot of opportunity to also, not only build the brand, but also as a revenue stream. And I think on a regular basis, our revenue stream is literally from like we run a food program upstairs, which is dedicated to the living room, which is an a la carte menu. Like I said, it gives diners an opportunity to maybe come back to Mask 4 or 5 times a month versus only being able to make, someone would come, maybe repeat a tasting menu twice in the month. But, the living room has actually opened that opportunity up for diners to be more regular at Mask, at the same time, drink more cocktails.
So, Aditi, let me ask you this. Is the living room profitable?
So, living room, I wouldn't say it's not profitable. It's only 14 seats. And the kind of real estate it's sort of occupying, it's not profitable. But Mask restaurant is a profitable business. And I think that we're looking at it as part of the restaurant. So we don't have a separate P&L for the living room at the moment.
Understood. And how many years would you say on an average does it take for a bar of your scale to become profitable?
If I had to open living room, which would easily be at least a 30-seater or 30 to 40-seater bar, I mean, that's what we would look to open as, like still being a speakeasy, but maybe doubling the number of seats and even having like people stand around the bar. So you could have 50 to 60 people through the door every night. You would look at least recovering costs in a year and a half. But if I tomorrow want to do maybe a more high energy bar, we're debating different concepts. If we, the kind of rents, etc., we end up paying, part of it could be high energy, part of it could be speakeasy. And if you go with a full high energy bar, people are able to even recover costs within 6 months. So it's really how you model your business.
While Duggar's living room ranked 48 on the list this year, the Bombay Canteen ranked 35th. Let's ask the man of the hour, what has the last 8 years of running the business taught him? Welcome to the Morning Brief, Yash. Before I begin, congratulations. Big win. How does it feel?
It feels good. Honestly, it's taken us 8 years to get to that place. And, whatever people say, and, a lot of chefs say it nowadays, that lists do not matter. A pat on the back and a recognition is always a sign in the right direction to a certain level. Like for me, I've been in this industry for now 17 years. I started working as a waiter. But as I've worked through the industry and been part of it in different countries, I've also been in a team where I've left the team and the year later they became a part of the list. I think I'm super happy. I'm like ecstatic.
So let me start with a basic one, right? Like, let's say I today want to start a bar, which is like the Bombay Canteen, and I want to have a full bar menu. What is the minimum amount of cash or money I should have to even consider making a start like this?
So, a couple of things. Every city in India has a different construction cost because just the city you're in, obviously, rent plays the biggest factor in. So, let's take Bombay. I would say, see, Bombay Canteen, for who's listening to us and has visited, is 4,100 square feet. And I do feel it's too big a restaurant. So, let's say you want to start a 2,000 square feet restaurant. Good equipment, everything together, pre-opening costs, labor costs, you're looking at nothing less than 1.5 crore, 2 crores. When we
And
started it 8 years ago, it was much, much lesser because we bootstrapped the entire thing. And I've
how much
always
was it
been
back
the
then?
on-site contractor for us. I think then when we did it, it was like 1.2. A lot of the things were the materials that we invested in then, I wouldn't invest in now. Like kitchen equipment, for example, is quite expensive, right? One of the ovens that you need, which every kitchen in India has, it's called as a rational oven. It's a German company who makes it. Just that equipment right now costs you 11 lakhs. And it's as big as maybe a 24-inch TV. So
Okay.
like I feel over time expenses have increased. Restaurants don't get input GST, so your project cost goes up by 20% there itself. So that's why I gave you that number.
You started with saying that you feel Bombay Canteen is a little too big. Why did you say that?
So me and Samir, when we decided we wanted to move back to India and start something, one of the critical things we quickly found out is our biggest overhead is going to be rent, no matter what you're going to be paying that at the end of the month. And we wanted to make sure we kept it below 10 to 12% of our overall budget allocated. So at that point, Kamla Mills wasn't a popular destination at all. We got a really great rent deal at that point. But what we fell in love with, as you've been there, is just the tall ceilings, pillarless space. Like you don't find that in Bombay. And for us, it was to give Mumbaikars the idea of space. Like it's only 100 cover restaurant. I could have easily squeezed in 60 more covers and made it like, tight and made more money out of it. But the idea was that you feel that general idea of space because all of us in Bombay live in the smallest apartments, traveling in the tightest of cabs and trains. It's important that when we go out, there's an idea of space.
What percentage of your average cover per person is contributed by alcohol versus food?
Throughout the year, Shaburi, it moves along differently. India obviously has a bunch of festivals where people don't drink, but the year end we do, which we call the season time for restaurants. we move on to a 50-50, like breakup between the two. Throughout the year, I think we average out on a 45-55, with 45 being alcohol or beverages and 55 being food. But it ranges between that for us. We've always been an equal between the two. Oh, Pedro, sometimes because it is in BKC, we do get a lot of the office crowd that starts coming in early to get a drink or so, might do a 50-50. But I would say 55-45 would be the best guess.
Has the contribution of alcohol in your average ticket size increased over the last few years?
If I say 50-50 has remained the same kind of, maybe 45-55, but within that 50 for beverages, there has been a huge like alteration, right? Like in the first couple of years of Bombay Canteen, we saw a lot of people in the first, that was the boom of the craft beer industry. We still have great beers on tap, but now having a beer on tap is normal. You walk into any bar, you want to have a craft beer on tap. Then it was like a big thing that you have like 5 craft beers. Then when the gin industry grew up in India, we saw that the burst of gin coming in. Where it comes to Bombay Canteen, I feel our cocktail culture over time in that 50 rupees has 50% has grown sizably, and that became a bigger chunk. So the way now we plan our menus needs to be, even the way we plan our bar has to be more focused towards creating cocktails, because at the end of the day, if you have 250, 300 people coming every day, you don't want them waiting for their drink as well.
So, out of your 100-seater restaurant, how many do you have to make sure you hit the mark every day to stay profitable?
I'm breaking it down to 100. Look, it's a lot of people. I'll tell you how much we'll need to do on a month. I can divide that back. But I think we can't be doing on an average less than 150 people. Not even 100, actually 200 people
In a
a
month?
day. Per day. So
Per
you
day.
do like 6,000 covers at least, minimum.
So 6,000 covers a month need to be spending a little over 2,000 rupees for a place like the Bombay Canteen to be profitable?
Yeah. Yeah.
So here's a question that I've always wondered about. Like, why are none of these bars which have made it to the Asia's Top 50 list present in any other city? Why are these all one outlet, one city sort of a setup? Why are they not chained? Or why is franchise not considered for any of these bars?
So there are two ideas for me for why bars have not scaled. One is India's licensing laws might be one of the worst licensing laws that were ever created. If I were to start the same bar in Delhi versus Bangalore, you need to approach it very differently because they have different licensing rules that you need to. So it's not a cut, copy, paste. Two is the demographic tastes are so different, right? Every state in our country is a different country by itself, and you need to respect that. Just because your flavors work in Delhi does not mean the flavors would work in Bangalore. So I feel that's my approach to it is if you are on one of these lists, you've taken a very nuanced approach. You want your skill, your craft to be showcased in a certain way, and craft and skill can't be scaled to a certain level.
What can other bars do to be included in such lists? And also, does it boil down to a choice between scale versus uniqueness?
It's a good question. So I'll answer the first part first and the second part. It's taken us 8 years to get there, so I don't know if I'm the right person to be telling someone how to get onto the list. But I feel one of the things you need, forget the list, but I think if you're starting a good bar, is have a philosophy and evolve the philosophy. Don't have a trend because trends change really fast. We are in the TikTok age where trends change every 2 days. Like the awards were in Singapore and not in Singapore, Hong Kong. And one of the things like now that you see in a lot of those bars is they don't really care about the perfect glassware, but it's what's going in it and it's about the way they're making you feel. Gone are the days when smoke was coming out or there was, like a car that your drink came in and all that. To your point, to the second question, scale can come from a multi-brand approach. In this present list, I'll give a Singapore example. Indra and Goi is a couple in Singapore who have now around 5 to 6 bars, out of which I feel a couple are already on the list, and one of them came second on the list. And they're doing this from the same city, right? So they've taken a different approach to it. They're like, instead of doing the same brand again, we're going to do a multi-brand approach, but every brand speaks for itself. And that's giving me my scale, right? Which in India, we've not yet like gone down that route. So I think there is a way to do it because at the end of the day, everyone's looking for a unique experience. What makes this bar in Bombay special, right? That's why I go to it. That's why I seek it on a list. And maybe that's the approach that people can take to it. Like there's someone called Will Godara who we look up to. He said it recently. He's like, service is black and white, but hospitality is multicolored, right? And that's the differentiation of a great bar.
A great bar isn't just a living room or a Bombay canteen, though. In fact, most of us rarely go to fine dining bars. Our usual haunts are chill, low key places, easy on the pocket, warm in service, and well stocked with a mix of affordable and slightly higher end liquor. These bars make up for the majority of this segment, and the economics of running one is very different from the upscale high end places that we just spoke about. Our next guest is Bala Krishnan, the founder of the Old Fashioned Bar in Bangalore. Welcome to the Morning Brief, Bala. Can you tell us a little bit about the Old Fashioned Bar? What was the concept? What was the economics of setting up such a bar? Rentals, space?
So the concept of the old fashioned bar was, getting old school cocktails, playing rock music, bringing in the old pub vibe or the pub culture of Bangalore back. The bar was a 2,500 square feet bar, very, very small compared to the new microbreweries or the new bars that open in the city where you have actually seen. So there's 2,500 square feet, 110 seater at full capacity, but we used to accommodate a maximum of around 80 to 85 people at the bar. Average spend at the bar used to be anywhere between 1,200 to 1,800. We have not seen ticket sizes lesser than 1,000 rupees per head. So that was a plus point because, people used to come there, get value for money, drink more cocktails. Those were the economics of operations. When it came to the rentals, again, Koramangala being one of the most, hot spots, the rentals were about 120 rupees a square feet. So we used to spend close to 2.2 to 2.3 lakhs on rentals every month.
What percentage of your total expense sheet did rentals constitute?
It cost me about 7%. See, so when I do a math or a computation when it comes to projections and the likes, right? The rentals for me should not go above 12 to 15%. If it goes about 12 to 15%, then there is a problem. You need to maximize your space so much more to bring it to a manageable level, right? Currently, larger spaces that people talk of, the rentals are quite high, right? But for us, it was very, very much within the manageable ratio or the percentage that you would look at.
All right. And in terms of real estate location, you did mention that how Old Fashioned Bar was about 2,500 square feet and it was towards the smaller side, right? Ideally, in a market like Bangalore, what would you say is a successful real estate space? Size like what could be the number of covers that will help it to become profitable early on?
Shabari, I think that is very subjective. If I have to open a bar, I will not open one which is less than 300 seater, right? I wouldn't go for the largest possible capacity also because end of the day, managing and maintaining that is also very important, right? It's very subjective when it comes to what size, but for me, a sweet spot would be about anywhere between a 250 to 350 seater. That is what I would believe would be easier for me to run and manage and make it into a successful business.
How important was food for your bar?
I wonder why I had a kitchen, I'll be honest. So it was somewhere between 75 to 80% in alcohol and 20% in food.
That is not the usual for an Indian bar, correct?
Correct. So certain plus points were that we were serving premium cocktails or, cocktails made with premium liquor or spirits, as you would call, at a very affordable price, right? So let's say our closest competitor, which was probably about half a kilometer away, was serving cocktails with a similar spirit at about 550, 600 rupees. And we were doing that at 350 rupees. So that is one of those reasons. And people used to come there, have quick 2, 3 drinks and then leave. That also used to happen a lot. So sitting there and dining and eating food was something which we never saw. Actually, after 6 months down the line, we had taken off all the main courses from the menu because it never made sense. We hardly had orders, probably about 2 or 3 orders in a week for main courses. It was all about finger food and starters, and that's what people wanted. And the pricing again, played a very important factor. Our starters used to start from 85 and go up to a maximum of 250.
So you see how divergent the barnomics is, right? Bala's rentals were almost half of what Aditi and Yash pay. Average order size was a fraction too. The rentals were 7% of his total costs, the area was half of a Bombay canteen, and the profitability margins were much easier to get. And yet, the old-fashioned bar shut down.
The response was great initially. People loved it. The bar did really well for the initial 12 to 15 months. And then what happened was the advent of the microbreweries in the city, right? So currently, Bangalore boasts of about 75 odd microbreweries, and they all started mushrooming in the year 2017, 2018, right? So the requirements of people, the drinkers or people who go out, right? That all changed. The perspective of drinking changed. People preferred larger spaces, open air spaces, a lot of options when it came to beer, and microbreweries churning out newer beers here and there. People wanted to go and try them out more, right? Bangalore also being the beer capital in India, right? Or the pub capital, as you would call it. They had a lot of options to go out to drink. So what happened was, smaller bars like the Old Fashioned and many others actually took a lot of hit when it came to the revenues.
Old Fashioned Bar was one of the several joints that became victim to the COVID-19 pandemic. But also, such bars exist in a really competitive space. Given that, how difficult is it for such a bar to be profitable?
It's very subjective. Some take time, some don't take time, some happen within like 14 to 15 months, some take about 24 to 30 months, right? We were, if you look at EBITDA positive, yes, we were. But if you look at actual profitability, the bar hadn't reached that level yet, right? If you look at just by the actual sale value, the bar did really well. But when you look at the actual profitability value, because most of the money that you earn as profits in the first 6 to 8 months is reinvested into the business, which goes into your marketing spends and the likes. The bar would have become profitable if COVID wouldn't have happened. But then unfortunately, no.
But I don't think Bala has given up. He nurtures the dreams of opening a bar again. And why not? In the industry, across segments, things are definitely looking up.
See, drinking out or dining out has actually increased a lot post the pandemic, right? People sat at home for close to 2 years and, they were all plucking each other's hair and they didn't know what to do, right? So once everything was open and, people had an opportunity to go out, people are venturing out a lot. It is also another industry that is thriving and growing globally, right? Year on year, you see at least 40 to 50% increment in terms of revenues, correct? Even if you look at states and, different state budgets, there is always an increment that happens to the alcohol revenues year on year. So people are embracing this as a culture and going out and drinking more or eating out more at different bars and restaurants. The future is bright though, especially when it comes to the bar and beverage industry. People are getting more open and, people are ready to accept changes. The trends are different. You see a lot of new things that are happening, very encouraging in terms of the beverage industry.
Bars in India have clearly come a long way. The F&B industry, which also happens to be one of the largest employment generators, was one of the worst hit industries during the pandemic. While this obviously includes not just bars, but all restaurants, the industry shrank by more than half to $25 billion in FY21 from $50 billion in FY20. Fine dining and bars were the worst hit categories. And this is why this year's Asia's 50 Best Bars is a giant vote of confidence for the Indian F&B players. Not only did bars make a huge comeback post-pandemic, but our bars are now making us proud at a global and regional level. India is one of the youngest and most populous countries in the world. While yes, it is true that the younger generation is staying away from drinking, 3 other consumer cohorts, that are the millennials, Gen X and boomers, are all enjoying their drinks. Therefore, the continued lack of contribution to sales from bars and restaurants is a big challenge. The biggest challenge of this industry continues to be state legislations. It is often said, being in the alcohol business in India, whether as a bar owner or a manufacturer of a brand, is like running your business in 28 different countries. The legislations and the process of getting a liquor license is vastly different and often tangled in a lot of red tape. But the good news is, bar owners always find a way around the process. This is a task nonetheless. And slowly but most definitely, we are working towards developing a lifestyle category which represents our indigenous craft liquids, whether it's whiskey or gin or even rum now for that matter, along with our local cuisines. There is only one way for Indian bars to go from here, onwards and upwards. You have been listening to the Morning Brief brought to you by the Economic Times, and a big thank you to our guests. I just would like to mention we are no way encouraging consumption of alcohol. It's a personal choice which can be detrimental to one's health. A shout out to the team that helped put the episode together, our producer Sumit Pandey, sound engineer Amrit Reggie, and executive producers Anirban Chaudhary, Anupriya Nair, and Arjit Barman. Please like, share, and subscribe to the Morning Brief on your favorite podcast platform to make sure you don't miss any episodes that we drop on every Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. Thank you for listening in. All clips used in the episode belong to their respective owners. Credits are mentioned in the description.